What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming to you with another video, and today we're going to be talking about Donnie Yen. So Donnie Yen a couple days ago did an interview where he said the reason why the Chinese market is not accepting Star Wars films is because they didn't grow up with that culture, and because it's a westernized film, it just doesn't have the ability to grab hold to audiences. Well, I'm going to explain why that's total garbage when you actually look at the box office numbers of other American-made products, but we'll get to that. Let's actually look to the words that he said. So first off, Star Wars is one of the most popular film franchises in the world. It's losing popularity, but not so much in China. While entries like The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi have easily surpassed the $1.3 billion mark at the worldwide box office, it turns out the Middle Kingdom isn't one of the reasons why. Each Star Wars installment since The Force Awakens has progressively grossed less and less in China, with The Last Jedi being such a box office bomb that it was infamously pulled after 2 weeks in theaters. So if you even need more reason as to why The Last Jedi is a terrible film, look no further than China. Now, some people might try and spin it saying, oh, it's because they didn't understand it. How about this? It was a garbage film that didn't even make sense to American audiences, let alone the Chinese audiences. So I'm sorry, but this is just more evidence to show that The Last Jedi is just not a very good film, especially when you compare the fact that in the United States and in other countries, there was a massive drop in viewership between week 1 and week 2. But let's not talk about that. Let's just ignore it and pretend like everything's fine and, oh, it's just because the Chinese market doesn't accept it. No, that's total garbage. But let's actually see what Donnie Yen himself had to say. He said, Chinese audiences didn't grow up with Star Wars culture, so unfortunately it didn't work. Marvel is a lot easier to understand. Star Wars, there's a whole universe out there. Marvel, from the costumes to the music to the idols to the stars, it's much easier to close the gap between the film itself and the audience. The problem there is, since you mentioned Marvel, what about Guardians of the Galaxy? That is a comic. That is a group of characters that even a lot of American audiences had no idea who they were. Even comic book fans, even friends of mine who are deep comic book fans, had very little knowledge of the Guardians of the Galaxy because they were always obscure characters. So how did that group of characters then somehow break into the Chinese market? It's not because they had any crazy stars that they would somehow known about already. I'm sorry, but if you're going to try and say that Chris Pratt was a household name before Guardians of the Galaxy in Chinese homes, I don't know what you're talking about, man, because it doesn't make any sense. So basically everything he said here, I like Donnie Yen. Let me just say off that Donnie Yen is a great actor, and he's actually probably my favorite new actor to the Star Wars universe, of probably my favorite new character to the Star Wars universe, may he rest in peace, of Rogue One. So I will say I like him, but he's just totally off base here. To me, this is a guy who was probably given an explanation from Disney saying, hey, oh, they're going to ask you about this, so here's the answer that you should give them. It's all because the Chinese markets just don't accept it. Well, if that's the case, then how do you explain this? So, yes, we're going to go back to some box office numbers. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the adjusted for inflation box office totals for all the Star Wars films, and then compare that to a couple of other American Western ideas and films and how they have fared overseas as well. So let's start off with Star Wars. So unfortunately, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, we don't have any numbers for them because we don't have any specific numbers for the Chinese market for those films. Because obviously the market has changed a lot. How movies are released has changed a lot as well, especially in China. And so the first numbers that we get don't come until The Phantom Menace, but we see a very interesting concept. So when The Phantom Menace came out, adjusted for inflation. Again, guys, remember, you can do your own research on this. You can look up the box office numbers on boxofficemojo.com. That was the source that I used. And then I used an inflation calculator. There are plenty of them online, and I recommend that you use them. And just so, you can check the math. Again, don't just take my word for it. Fact check me if you want. Because, at the end of the day, I don't want to just be spouting something that I might be completely wrong on. But I've done the research myself. And if you do it too, maybe you'll understand, hey, wait a minute. This isn't so crazy after all. So The Phantom Menace made $6.2 million in this is the Chinese box office. When it comes to Attack of the Clones, $7.6 million. And then Revenge of the Sith, $11.7 million. So what do you notice there? It's an upward trend. It is making more and more money. Why do you think that is the case? Now, it couldn't be because, the Chinese audiences liked what they were seeing. Some of them were interested and they wanted to see where the story went. It couldn't be that maybe the quality got better. Maybe you could say, it's because the theaters, it opened in more theaters in China. China started to, over the course of those several years, made the film more available to other people. But what you do see is an expansion. You see it growing. And that Revenge of the Sith, especially $11.7 million, is a very good number that I want to compare to in a second. Then we go to The Force Awakens. The Force Awakens made $132 million. That's pretty damn good for a film that had been out already. It's not that they had never experienced Star Wars before. They had already received The Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. The reason why is because it looked like an amazing film. It was very hyped. It was a worldwide phenomenon. And guess what? Chinese audiences went out to see it. Then what happens? Rogue One comes out. $72 million. You know, that's not great. It's not as big because obviously there aren't as many, big stars in this one. It's a lesser known story. It's not a part of the, the overall canon of the films. Not the canon of the films, but you know what I mean. The episodic series of the films. So it makes a little bit sense that it would probably make less. But even then but people are still coming out to see it. Then The Last Jedi happens. And what do we see? Not only do we see a drop, we see a drastic drop from $72 to $43 million. Now, why is that the case? Probably because why? It was only in theaters for 2 weeks. And why is that? Because it was a bad film. It was a film that no one was going to see. Rogue One only made $72 million, and yet people still went out to see it. They didn't pull that one early from theaters. And then, of course, that leads us to the most recent film, Solo, which made a whopping $16 million. Now, what I think is the most interesting is the fact that Solo made $16 million, and yet when you go back to Revenge of the Sith, that made $11 million. So Revenge of the Sith only made a few $1 million less than Solo, which had significantly better marketing than Revenge of the Sith, and also had a Disney studio behind it to push it. So already just looking at the Star Wars bracket, looking at the Star Wars movies, you see, wait a minute, there was an increasing trend, even with the prequels, as bad as they were, and now with The Force Awakens and with all the new trilogy that we've been getting, it's been getting progressively less and less. Now, do I think that Episode 9 is going to make less than Solo? It might not, but I really do think it's going to make less than Last Jedi. Not because it's a Star Wars film, but because Star Wars is just not appealing to Chinese audiences because they haven't been making very good films that people actually want to see. So let's go to another American, because everyone's saying, oh, it's because it's an American franchise, it's Western ideals. Well, that's the case, then how do you explain Mission Impossible? So here are the numbers for Mission Impossible. Again, all of these are adjusted for inflation. So we go from Mission Impossible 1 made $8 million, pretty respectable. 2 made $5 million, that's understandable. 2 sucked. 3 then made $12 million. And here is the interesting thing. So this is a franchise. This is a series. And you don't see the same trend like you do in other franchises where movies make less over time after their sequels. You see a drastic increase. Between Mission Impossible 3 and 4, you went from $12 million in China to $113 million. That is Mission Impossible, a white hero, a white male hero who is doing well in China. Why? Why is that the case? Is it because they grew up with it? They grew up with Star Wars culture. They grew up with Mission Impossible culture, right? No, guess what? They didn't. And yet they're still going out to see it. Why is that the case? Could it be because the action sequences are amazing? Could it be because they have the ability to draw in a lot of people because the films are actually pretty good? Because they actually are films that people want to see once, twice, 3 times? Couldn't be. And then what happens at 5? $144 million. Now, of course, we don't know the numbers yet for Mission Impossible 6 Fallout, the one that's currently out in theaters right now, because it has not been released in China yet. And I guarantee you that we'll likely see a significantly higher number than 5 was. Why is that the case? Because they're making better and better films. They're improving the product. They're putting work into it. And guess what they're trying to do? They're trying to please the audiences. They're trying to please the fans who they know are the ones who are going to make them the money. This is what Lucasfilm doesn't understand. They do not care about what the audiences think. They do not care about what the fans think. Rian Johnson himself pretty much said all that. Pretty much said everything about that. You even had Finn, John Boyega, saying, "We don't care. We don't care." Or "Your fan theory sucks," as Rian Johnson famously said. That's the reason why the films are failing. Because they don't care. They are the ones, Rian Johnson, John Boyega, they're the ones that kind of showed their hand saying, no, they really do not care. They would rather push an agenda. They would rather push the Force is female. They would rather push pansexualism. All of this nonsense that's been put into Star Wars. They would rather push that than make a profit, than actually listen to their fans and actually make better products. If you want a great example of that, look to Mission Impossible. Again, not a foreign-based idea, an American-based idea, and yet consistently making more and more money, and now making significantly more money, $144 million compared to $8 million from the first one. That's a huge jump. You want another example? All right, we'll give you another one. Jurassic Park. There is no record for Jurassic Park 1 through 3 in China. Again, China has not always been very welcome to Western films. So we don't have any record about how Jurassic Parks 1 through 3 could have done in the Chinese market. We do have Jurassic World, though. $243 million versus $248 million in Fallen Kingdom. So Fallen Kingdom, the sequel, has made more. Again, has progressed. Why? Because they listen to the fans. Now, is Fallen Kingdom a good film? Is it a better film? Most people would say no. But they provided a lot of dinosaur action, that's for sure. So obviously they appealed to the audiences in China. But also, let's look at that. $248 million. Wow. Yeah, none of the new films. Force Awakens, $132 million versus $248 million. Guess what? Steven Spielberg, American director. How do you explain that? Oh, it's because it's dinosaurs and it's appealing to everyone, and Star Wars is just for Western. No, if any film is going to appeal to a lot of people, it's Star Wars. Star Wars is a diverse universe filled with aliens from different cultures and all these other things, characters that many people can relate to. So to say that Star Wars is somehow different in any way whatsoever just doesn't work. And then one more for you. Another American-based film starring another American-based white actor, Jason Bourne. Let's see what they did. Identity, first one, $2.7 million. Supremacy, made a little bit less, $2.4 million. Ultimatum, made a lot more, $3.678. And guess what happened? Legacy, with no Matt Damon, made $17.6 million. A huge jump. And then the most recent Jason Bourne, $70 million. Again, every film is making more and more. Even the film that did not have Matt Damon, the big star. Instead, that one starred Jeremy Renner, who most people would not consider to be a huge star up until he was a part of the Marvel Universe, still brought in $17 million. So what's the point of all this? This is all to try and show that everyone that's trying to spin this, Donnie Yen, I think Donnie Yen's a good guy. I think that he's probably getting an order from the top to tell him, oh, you need to spin it this way because obviously it's not our fault. It's obviously not Kathleen Kennedy's fault or Lucasfilm's fault as to why Star Wars is failing. It's because Chinese audiences just don't understand. They didn't grow up with the Star Wars culture, so it just didn't work. Marvel's easier to understand. Then explain to me how in all of these other franchises, Mission Impossible, Jurassic Park, Jason Bourne, all of them still, again, part of the culture here in America, not a part of the Chinese culture. How is it then that those films have survived? How is it that those films have succeeded, have grown their audiences? Could it be that in those instances with those films, it's because they actually listen to their audiences? Could it be that they actually give their audiences what they want? And could the difference be that's because Lucasfilm does not do those things? Lucasfilm tries to serve itself ideologically instead of trying to save itself financially. Guys, so what are y'all's thoughts about this? Did I make any mistakes in my math? Please let me know in the comments below. I greatly appreciate that. Also, please, again, check the math for yourself. I never want to be the person that says, this is what I think, you need to believe it, and then just leave it at that. I put the numbers out there for you. I do the work for you, but I want you to be able to check it for yourself. If you're interested, if you think, hey, wait, that doesn't sound right. Did it really jump that much? Did Jurassic World really make that much more than Star Wars? Yes, it did. Go ahead and check it for yourself. Again, I'm not hiding anything. This is all my work. This is everything I've done. I've shown you I've shown you all my hands. I've shown you every single thing that I've used. And you know what? I appreciate any criticism. As long as it's constructive criticism, I appreciate it nonetheless because it makes me a better person. And I'm hoping that if you're one of those people out there who defends Star Wars, who says that Lucasfilm's doing nothing wrong, I'm sorry, the numbers don't lie. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Smash that like button if you liked it. Hit that subscribe if you haven't done so already. The Geeks and Gamers channel is an amazing place to be, so please support them. I am so glad to be a part of this community now. It's fantastic. Love you guys so much. Also, if you want to check me out, check out Odin's Media Blog. The link for my channel will be in the description. I talk about Star Wars. I talk a little bit about box office. Mostly I'm doing my box office work here for this channel now, but I talk about tons of things, and my live streams are a lot of fun. So thank y'all so much, guys, for watching. Have a great day, and as always, God bless.